Congratulations. You didn't shy away at all. So our first order of business is presentation of the MS4 Youth Awards to students from Piper and Rosedale Middle Schools and from Harmon High School. Sarah White is here to make the presentations.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to come today to give awards to our youth that participated in our first annual Stormwater PSA contest. So this was open to all middle school, high school, community college in the Wyandotte County area. We had 3 schools that participated, and the topic
+19139158346 is now joining.
Okay, well, I'm glad you could join us. The topic is how you can protect our waterways. And this fits in with our MS4 program. This is part of our permit that we have with the state, as well as our permit with EPA. And part of that is both education on stormwater quality and pollution prevention, as well as youth outreach, and so this paired really well. This is above and beyond what we have committed to EPA. This is a very creative program that no one else in the metro area is doing. So we're very excited about this. So we're going to go through the winners, and we're going to ask the students to come up and line up by Jeff Fisher, who is our Public Works Director. And we'll go through the winners and present their awards. Another item I'd like to point out is we submitted this idea and presentation to a national conference, the Water and Environment Federation conference, and we did get selected out of lots of different applicants, so we're really excited about that. I'd also like to recognize the participating schools and teachers, and if they're here, could they also come up front? From Harmon High School, Mr. David Bennett. From Rosedale Middle School, Miss Jen Hill. And from Piper Middle School, Miss Jessica LaFollette. So there was 2 categories of our competition. One was posters and one was video. For the posters, we had lots of entries, and we had a committee that judged them and came up with our top 3 in both the middle school and high school levels. So I'll just run through these, and then we can give the awards. And so these will be showcased on our website as well as UGTV as public service announcements. So this is the first place for the middle school. Second place. Third place. This is our first, we tied for third place. This is the third place. First place for high school. Second place. Third place. And then we had a video competition. And we will go through these. You guys will be able to see them. So this is our first place winner that will be showcased on UGTV. Second place. And then our third place.
I don't know what this stuff is, but Daddy Gilmore. No, don't do that! I don't know what this stuff is, but Daddy Gilmore. No, don't do that! I don't know what this stuff is, but Daddy Gilmore. No, don't do that! Why? What this stuff is, but Daddy Gilmore. No, don't do that! Why? What this stuff is, but Daddy Gilmore. No, don't do that! Why? Because there stuff is, but Daddy Gilmore. No, don't do that! Why? Because there stuff is, but Daddy Gilmore. No, don't do that! Why?
I think we had a little
Because there are threes, but Daddy Gilmore. No!
difficulty on this.
I don't know what this stuff is, but Daddy Gilmore.
Yeah. Well, we apologize for that. It seems like we have an audio glitch on that, so we'll try to get that fixed and maybe show it later. But we want to go ahead and have the students.
I don't know what this.
It was a really, really good one. So we'll go ahead and have the students come up and present the awards. So for first place for middle school poster, Samantha Gomez.
I'm here tonight.
Okay. Second place, Kelvin Zong. Third place, a tie with Kimberly Escobedo and Briley Reese. Third place for high school poster is Adriana Mendoza, Leslie Chavez, and Carla Ramos. Second place is Oscar Silva, Juan Robles, and Mecca Cameron.
Yeah, also couldn't make it.
Okay. And for first place, Damaris Gonzalez, Diego Herrera, and Yamarelli Lopez. Third place for video is Brandon Dark. And second place, Alicia Lopez and Alondra Castillo. Okay. And first place, Brenton Ruano, Ram Garong, and Javier Soto. And if we could please give everyone a big round of applause. And we want to thank you again for letting us come and give these awards.
Thank you very much, and Congratulations. Next item, I'll ask the clerk if there are any revisions to tonight's agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a blue sheet was distributed on yesterday. We have an update to the agenda under the public hearing agenda. This additional information is for the public hearing amending for the 5-year consolidated plan, and that item is for a resolution to be added to that part of the agenda.
Okay, tonight we have two distinct parts to our meeting. The planning and zoning portion will be handled first, followed by the regular commission meeting. I'll ask the clerk to read the statement required by state law governing the planning and zoning portion of our meeting, followed by the items on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
Has Commissioner Mugia joined us?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. We would like to welcome all present to this meeting of the commission meeting. Members of the commission are Mayor David Alvey, Commissioner Melissa Bynum at Large District 1, Commissioner Tom Bowles at Large District 2, Commissioner Gail Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Brian McKiernan, District 2, Commissioner Ann Mudia, District 3 is joining us via phone. Commissioner Harold Johnson Jr., District 4 is unable to be here. Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5, Commissioner Angela Markley, District 6, Commissioner Jim Walters, District 7, and Commissioner Jane Philbrooks, District 8 is unable to be here. As each petition is called this evening, all persons for or against will be given an opportunity to express their views. As if this is the first time that a particular petition has been before this commission, the commission has 3 options. Number 1, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission with 6 votes. Number 2, it can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. And number 3, it can return the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration, together with the statement specifying the reason for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the Planning and Zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, Unified Government Commission, or staff, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on all the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are any requests to set aside items from the consent agenda. This is your time to stand up and request that an item be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If an item is set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted upon separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We would remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Once the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state your views. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and city for the record. The mayor and the commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any item on the planning and zoning agenda. I will ask if any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponent or opponents on any item on the agenda.
Commissioner McKiernan?
I've had contact with proponents of SP 2018-33.
Commissioner Markley?
Contact with opponents of SP 2018-11.
Commissioner Bynum?
Proponents and opponents of SP 2018-12.
Commissioner Kane?
Proponent of SP 2018-12.
Commissioner Burrows?
Proponents and opponents on SP 2018-12 and proponents on 2018-45.
And I have had communications with opponents and proponents of SP-2018-12.
And Mr. Mayor, this is Commissioner Murgia.
Yes.
I have had contact with proponents and opponents for 2018-12 as well.
Thank you.
I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Change of zone application item 13160, Jasper Molinary. Change of zone from M2 General Industrial District to R2DB, two-family district for an existing duplex at 819 Southwest Boulevard. Recommended for approval. Special use permit applications, item 1, SP 2018, Jairo S. Flores True Hill. Special use permit for the temporary use of land to park 2 commercial trucks and to keep 2 horses and 6 chickens at 8001 Swartz Road. Recommended for denial. Item 2, SP 2018-12, John L. Peterson, special use permit for a performance auto service shop at 1110 Merriam Lane, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 3, SP 2018-19, Jimmy Smith with Smith Services, special use permit for the temporary use of land to keep 2 storage container units on site at 5401 State Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 4, SP 2018-33, Jessica Zieg with RZ Properties LLC, special use permit for an Airbnb at 625 Northrop Avenue, recommended for approval for 1 year. Item 5, SP 2018-38, Joe McLaughlin with BHC Roads, special use permit for a cemetery at 2726 Shawnee Drive and 2301 South 34th Street, recommended for approval. Item 6, SP 2018-40, Ellen Ritchie, special use permit for an Airbnb 444 Shawnee Road, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 7, SP 2018-41, Tim Schreiber with PQ Corporation, renewal of a special use permit for an office trailer at 1700 Kansas Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 8, SP 2018-42, Will Anderson with BHC Roads, special use, renewal of a special use permit for an auto auctions parking facility at 8501 Gibbs Road, recommended for approval for 5 years. Item 9, SP 2018-44, Albert Travers Underwood, special use permit for an Airbnb at 4523 Adams Street, recommended for approval for 1 year. Item 10, SP 2018-45, Ryan Dink with McEnany, Van Cleve, and Phillips, PA, special use permit for a continuation for tractor-trailer parking at American Hotel at 7949 Split Log Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Vacation application item 1, RW 2018-2, Will Anderson with BHC Roads, vacation of right-of-way at 342 South Bethany Street, recommended for approval. Miscellaneous ordinances, item number 1 is an ordinance rezoning property at 9410 Hurlbrink Road from R1 Single Family District to AG Agricultural District, recommended for approval. Item 2 is an ordinance rezoning property at 1300 Meadowlark Lane from CPO Planned Non-Retail Business District to CP3 Planned Commercial District, recommended for approval. Item 3 is an ordinance vacating utility easements at 12940 and 12934 Hubbard Road, and that also is recommended for approval. Those are all items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the planning and zoning consent agenda will be voted on by one vote to follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Are there any set-asides? Yes, ma'am. Please come to the... Thank you. Please state your name and address.
My name is Rebecca Miracle. I live at 2410 South Mill Street, Kansas City, Kansas, and I'd like to have the SP 2018-12 pulled.
Thank you. SP 2018-12.
Move for approval for all remaining items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Mugia,
Aye.
Kane, Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to set aside item B2, special use permit SP 2018-12. John L. Peterson for Performance Auto Service Shop at 1110 Merriam Lane. The Planning Commission recommended approval for 2 years. I'll ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. The application. Hello, test. A little more. Okay, there we go. Here. We know this one works. The application was recommended to the Board of Commissioners by the Planning Commission with a unanimous vote with several stipulations related to the operation and how it's conducted and where they can park and how the parking lot can be organized. The applicant's here and can make a presentation related to the full operation of the facility.
Thank you. I'll ask the applicant to come to the microphone to present this item to address the concerns brought up by staff. Again, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor Alvey, members of the commission. My name is Pete Peterson. My address is 748 Ann Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66101. With me tonight is Mr. Ryan Charlton, who is the owner of the business in question. I realize your plate's rather full tonight, but in all fairness to my client, I will, though, be as brief as I can. I will tell you exactly how this permit application came to being. I'm an attorney here locally. I represent Ryan and his brother Chad, who own Modified by KC LLC, which is the business in question. They are tenants at 1110 Merriam Lane. The landlord is Mr. Ron Buck, who owns Buck Roofing, who could not be here, I don't believe, this evening, but was at the Planning Commission meeting. Ryan and his brother had a thriving business at 728 Southwest Boulevard beginning in 2011. It got so successful that they needed an expansion. They moved then and knew Mr. Buck, who had just built a brand new building in 2016 at 1110 Merriam Lane. He looked at it, they liked it. It was zone C3 industrial. They thought for sure it would be fine for their business. So did Mr. Buck. They did not realize that they needed a special use permit, and they signed then a 5-year lease with Mr. Buck commencing in January of 2017. If they would have known that they would have needed a special use permit, they would, of course, had the lease subject to the acceptance of an application successfully completed for an SUP, but that was not found out till later. There are a few, I won't say contradictions, but misconceptions in the staff report. The staff report states, I believe, at page 2 that there are no business licenses held by this company. That is incorrect. They had an active business license in 2017 at 728 Southwest Boulevard. They then moved in January of 2017 to their new location. They then applied for another business license, copies of which I have here. They then received them, but were told when they asked for a renewal through calendar year 2018, they would need a special use permit. That's what has us here this evening. We applied in December of 2018. a month after we found out that we needed the special use permit. So, as we all know, once the special use permit was applied for, then we had to have a neighborhood meeting. I sent out, as their attorney, 39 letters of residences and businesses within 200 feet pursuant to ordinance and statute, and we had our neighborhood meeting on January 29th, 2018. Out of 39 letters sent, only 3 individuals showed up. One of the individuals was Mr. Braden, who owns Braden Roofing right across the street from Buck Roofing, who really just had some questions and was not opposed. There was one lady who I believe is here tonight. She was not at the Planning Commission meeting. She was interested in purchasing a house in that area, and she did mention that she was concerned somewhat about the noise. And the other individual that was there opposing this was Aaron Stricka with Rosedale Development Association. For brevity's sake, I'll refer to Rosedale Development Association as RDA here on out. I had met with Aaron at RDA prior to the January 29th meeting. I realized Aaron's got a job to do. She told me flat out that Rosedale Development Association is across the board opposed to any type of automotive business on Miriam Lane, any type of automotive business. Now, I think all of you are too young to remember the song back in 1971 called Signs. It's not one of my favorites, but there was a line in that that I remembered because a young man was applying for a job and there was a sign that said, "Long hairs need not apply." Well, that's sort of the mentality that we're dealing with here when it means automobile, any kind of automobile type of commercial business is not welcome in Rosedale. And I just think they should be judged individually on the basis, the contributions that they make. We then had a Planning Commission meeting on April 9th. As noted in the notes, we had a unanimous vote for approval of this application. And there were 2 people that were opposing this. One, of course, Aaron with RDA, and there was another individual, Mr. Hernandez, who we met with after the meeting, who was concerned about some traffic on Stein. That has been addressed and remedied, and I think he was under a little misconception. I don't believe he's here tonight. So that brings us to what the issues sort of are here. And I think the 2 issues that have stood out that people have talked about are noise and parking. Well, Mr. Buck has purchased additional property behind the building that he now owns, and his intention, with your approval, I assume, I do not represent Mr. Buck, is to extend more parking in that area for this business. However, we have stipulated certain things about parking, and I think that will be handled quite easily. Also, the noise factor. We will make sure that the noise factor is at a minimum. It is quite unusual, in my opinion, that RDA is objecting to noise and parking when none of their individual members that I know of even work or live around this business at 1110 Miriam Lane. None of our neighbors have come forward either at the neighborhood meeting, the planning committee meeting, and voiced any opposition to noise or parking. Some of the contributions that my clients have made is that just today, 2 Kansas City, Kansas police officers were at the business, and it was just a coincidence. My clients have 24/7 surveillance cameras that film Miriam Lane, and the police from South Patrol every 2-3 days come by and look at it and review it to make sure everything is fine. They do that naturally gratis, and they officers Rodriguez and Ball said I may use their name for tonight because they are in favor of this application. Also, my clients have not a formal intern program, so to speak, with high schools and junior highs in the Kansas City, Kansas area. They have contacted them, invited youngsters to come down, sort of learn the ropes, see what working with your hands is all about, And that's what they do. And that project and application is used during the summer for these young folks. Finally, I would like to state that both of these young men were born and bred here in Kansas City, Kansas. They'd like to keep their business here in Kansas City, Kansas. They pay approximately $4,000 to $6,000 a month in sales tax. They pay real estate taxes. They employ 5 full-time people. I do not have any idea what Mr. Buck would do with this building if we are not approved, but it's a pretty single-purpose building right now. These young men have spent over $30,000 in tenant improvements. They've built hoists in there for these automobiles, and they will certainly abide by the conditions and stipulations that are in the staff report. So on behalf of them, I would sincerely ask for your support here tonight, and I will be glad to answer any questions now or after any other individuals object and have questions also. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to open the public hearing, ask if there is anyone present who would like to speak in favor of SP 2018-12. If so, please come to the podium at this time. Give us your name and address for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
I'm Wes Neal, 1051 Merriam Lane, directly across the street from these young guys. And as far as I can tell, the main objection is the noise that they may create. And I can say that I'm there all day and all night, and I haven't heard any excessive noise, not near as much noise as the cars which go along Merriam Lane all day, and not only during rush hour, but all day long. And I never hear any noise from the shop from these guys here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Yes.
May I add one thing? Now that Mr. Neal has spoken, Mr. Mayor, there was a comment by staff about a recent incident down on Merriam Lane where a transport carrier that had carried some and delivered some cars to my client, which is a very rare occasion because normally customers drive there, was blocking a bicycle lane. And there's some words perhaps exchanged. It was not with my clients, it was with the independent driver of the transport. We have successfully negotiated with Mr. Neal, who owns the Boulevard Drive-In right across the street, that if and when any more transports arrive, we can use his lot to either take the cars off or put the cars on so there'll be no more incidents on Merriam Lane.
Thank you. And we have one more person who wanted to speak in favor. Sir? Brian, I guess.
I'm Ryan Charlton. I'm at 1110 Merriam Lane, Kansas City, Kansas. We're just trying to operate it's a niche type of business for automotive. We specialize in turbocharged vehicles. We've been doing it, we've been in operation since 2007. And it's something that's totally different for the area. We think we bring something viable to the area. It's kind of neat to see the high school kids and the junior high kids that walk the area. Bless you. They come in, they take pictures, they video the area. It's neat to see the young kids getting involved in it because we've kind of lost touch with that with the younger generation, with being so in touch with their phones and social media and whatnot. So it's neat to see them kind of coming back to playing with their cars and hands and whatnot. So that's what we try to bring back to the area. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is no one else who would like to speak in favor, is there anyone present in opposition who would like to speak on this item? If so, now is the time to come to the podium. Please state your comments. Give us your, yes, ma'am, please come forward. and give us your name and address again.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Miracle at 2410 South Mill Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66103. It's just down the street from their business. I'm born and raised Rosedale, and I've been trying forever to get Rosedale built up. Southwest Boulevard and Merriam Lane is the main street that goes through our district. And when you go down there, all you see is cars. I mean, we got 13 already. We don't need another one. We're trying to bring in better business. When you go down, it almost looks like you're going down 26th Street. All you see is cars, like the junkyard on 26th Street in Argentine. We don't need any more of these. It's not that I'm opposed them, but we have enough, and we're trying to get better business in. And when you go down and you see all these cars, they're not wanting in. So I'm opposed to that because of this.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, please
Yes,
state your
I'm
name and
Bonnie.
address.
Bonnie Meadows, 2525 South 12. My
Yes,
only
pull the
concern.
mic down.
Excuse me, Bonnie.
I'm sorry.
How's that?
Thank you. And my only concern is the parking. It's hard to get down that little narrow street. So that was my only objection to it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Jatame Taylor. I live at 2303 South Early Street. I am with Rosedale Development Association at 1403 Southwest Boulevard as well. RDA opposes this application because the Performance Auto Shops is not appropriate use of this site. The UG has invested an enormous amount of money into improving this corridor over the past several years. With the improvement, stormwater controls, sidewalks, and bike lanes. As the corridor has improved, we have seen increased interest from businesses looking to locate on the corridor. It's extremely important to make wise decisions here about the best possible use of the property along the corridor to continue the revitalization in this area. The Southwest Boulevard Merriam Lane corridor is already home, as Becky said, to 13 used car lots and other automotive businesses, creating the appeal of a mile of cars when you drive up and down the road. The overwhelming number of the car lots decreases the neighborhood's marketability to other types of businesses, making it harder to develop a healthy mix of office, light industrial, retail, residential uses in the neighborhood. I am particularly concerned that this business is the furthest west along the corridor in the Rosedale so far, as it gives the appearance of a longer corridor devoted to the automotive uses. RDA has opposed all recent applications for SUPs for automotive uses on this corridor, not because there's anything wrong with automotive businesses, but because the cumulative effect of the high concentration of automotive businesses makes it harder to achieve.
You have 1 minute, ma'am.
Yes. The vision laid out for the Southwest Boulevard Merriam Corridor Master Plan, which includes a diverse mix of businesses, a visually appealing streetscape, and connected and walkability in the neighborhoods. In addition to the problems created by the automotive uses at this site, this business has especially been problematic. Neighbors have expressed concerns about the noise of revving cars, about the speed in the neighborhood and the corridor, and especially about parking. In the neighborhood meeting on January 30th, when RDA staff expressed concerns about the huge number of cars parked end-to-end in the parking lot and on 11th Street, the applicant's lawyer stated that the excess cars would be moved and the cars would no longer be parked end-to-end, but only in marked spaces. They did not follow through with that. RDA has sent photos taken 3 different times during the day this month showing the cars parked in the driveway, on the street, and directly behind the fronts of the cars.
Your time is up, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to express opposition, comments? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Would the petitioner like to make any additional closing comments?
Briefly, thank you, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, and again, nothing against used car lots or anything like that, but this is a specific designed business, high performance. There's only there's people that come from 4, 5 states around here. They stay in our motels. They go to eat Dagwoods. They go to Rosedale Barbecue. This is it automotive? Yes. But is it a body shop? No. There's no parts laying around or anything like that. So, you know, given that, and we have stipulations and conditions concerning parking. I mean, I can't be down there every day. My clients are there every day, and they're just going to have to abide by those. We know that. So, again, we'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. I have questions that are actually, I think, possibly mostly directed to staff, just trying to understand this entire process. So I read the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting, and I then went and listened to the audio recording, and then I went and read the Southwest Boulevard Merriam Lane Corridor Plan. That plan looks like it's about 2011. I can't tell because there's not really a date on it, but based on it, it looks like maybe around 2011. Just guessing.
Probably 2010, but maybe it was adopted in 2011.
So I'm asking partly, did our process work correctly when, I think I heard Mr. Peterson say, when the applicant went to the new location and a foreign business license, that there was a new address, that did trigger the SUP process. That did trigger
Correct.
The special use permit.
There is no business license at this address.
So, okay.
I just looked in the system again just now. There is one still at 728 Southwest Boulevard, but it has not been changed to this location
Okay,
yet.
so I'm hoping that our processes are operating properly in terms of, it's my understanding, business license gives you their data, and then you look to see what, if zoning matches up with use.
That's correct.
And at some point, someone discovered there was a new address, and I thought I heard Mr. Peterson say they told business license they had a new address. So I'm...
Well, when a new form comes to us with a new address, we check it against the zoning. And Mr. Peterson made one slight error. He said it was C3 industrial. C3 is not an industrial district. It is a commercial district. They are currently in an industrial district along Southwest Boulevard, and they moved into a commercial district. So
okay.
When we were made aware of the change in address, we sent back the form saying that they needed a special use permit because the zoning wasn't appropriate.
Okay. And so the requirement for the special use permit is because of the ordinance that we adopted recently?
Correct.
Okay. And
about 2.5 years ago.
So that is not just for used auto sales. That must be a more broad global ordinance.
It's more broad than just the
okay.
used car sales.
Okay. So in the corridor study that's 7 or 8 or 9 years old, one of the pages toward the end talks about a corridor zoning overlay, and I'm wondering if that happened because it looked like a recommendation.
It was a recommendation that has not been implemented
Did not
yet.
happen. So it's the current recent adoption of the automotive ordinance that triggers this
Correct.
Special use permit. Okay. All right. I went to Merriam Lane today, and the business looks nice. Even though there might be pictures in the packet of the parking that was addressed today, it was not that way at all, which is good. And Merriam Lane looks nice also. I'm really happy and pleased with Merriam Lane. But I also saw a whole variety of businesses there, and many of them seem to me to be light industrial, and many seem automotive. That particular building and that particular activity don't strike me as necessarily out of character with anything else that's happening there. And I want to state and stress that not only do I understand the concerns of RDA, and I really appreciate the work RDA does, they do important work. I don't find anything necessarily out of line with what's being requested. And based on the stipulations that the planning board has asked for, that we can only assume will be adhered to, I will make a motion for approval.
Second.
I just had all these questions that I needed to make sure.
+19139158346
We have two
is
others.
now exiting.
We have two others who'd like to comment. Commissioner Kane?
Well, unlike my fellow commissioner, I drove down there too, except I didn't drive there once. I work on that road. So I drove down there several times since this has come up and looked at it. And I don't do it at just this particular site. I do it at all the sites. It looks like we're going to be here for a while. And in fact, I toured it today. And you know, I worked at General Motors for 35 years, and I would not want those guys to see my garage. It's a beautiful building. It sets back a little off the road. And when we, and I don't like foreign cars, but when we are bringing something that's unique to the community, and we can have it here, which means we draw people from outside the community, and you couldn't tell what it was unless you walked in there. You know, I'm right down the street, and if you saw the way we parked our cars down there, you might come down and complain. Every one of those cars was parked the way they were supposed to be, and I probably drove down there a dozen times, and I'm also in favor of it.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to know from the applicants, what are the business hours and days of the week? And if all of the modifications are done inside the building, you know, whether or not there's anything done outside other than just parking. Thank you.
You know, whether or not there's anything done outside other than.
I'm Ryan Charlton.
+19139158346 is now joining.
Our hours are posted. They're 9:30 to 6:30 Monday through Friday, 11 to 5 on Saturdays, and we do not do any work outside of our facility. Everything is done inside.
All right. Any further questions or comments from the commission? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the special use permit.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Motion to approve the special use permit. You have a motion and a second.
Roll call. McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane. Barkley.
Aye.
Walters. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was it on the set-asides. Going to planning committee. Next, we have.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I apologize. I am having a hard time staying connected to our audio system. I apologize. I know you keep hearing a recorded message. I'm sorry to disrupt the meeting, but I've been disconnected a couple times. Apologize for that.
We understand. Thank you. We have 4 items under the planning and zoning non-consent agenda. Item A1, change of zone application number 3152 and number B1, special use permit application SP-2017-65 will be heard together. Amy Grant and John Peterson with Polsinelli are requesting to rezone 5015 Gibbs Road from CP1 Planned Limited Business District to CP3 Planned Commercial District for an auto body shop. The Planning Commission voted 6-2 to recommend approval for the change of zone. The vote was also 6-2 to approve the special use permit for 2 years. As stated, the 2 items will be heard together. However, they will require separate votes. I'd ask Rod Richardson to make some opening remarks.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out a sound issue there. This case, 50th and Gibbs Road is, I believe, the old grocery store there, and it is proposed for a body shop where all of the body work would be on the interior of the site. Mr. Peterson is here, and he'll present the rest of his case.
I ask the petitioner to present his application.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Kirk Peterson, 6201 College Boulevard, Overland Park, here on behalf of Dent and Detail Clinic. The owner, Todd Huffman, is also with me. As Mr. Richardson said, the project site here is at 5015 Gibbs, just west of I-635 on Gibbs Road. It's a 2.2 acre site. Cursor on the screen you can see here. Has an 18,000 foot building there. As Rob said, a former grocery store, then a printing shop. It's been over 10 years now that it's been vacant. In terms of the site's surroundings, and I'll actually give you a few shots. I think you probably have this in your packet, but give you a few different angles looking to the south. All four sides here. That's the back. And looking back to the west. In terms of our neighbors, always good to know our surroundings. To the west, we have a quick shop, and then west of that, an auto mechanic shop. To the southwest, we have a retail strip that has a battery exchange there. To the north, across Gibbs, you can see there's 3 residential properties. You also have a water tower and a substation just to the north, a little bit to the west. To the east, we have a car wash, a thrift shop, and 1 other commercial building. And to the south, we have a home care service building. In terms of the proposed use for the site, Dent and Detail Clinic, which is a business that's been operating for 19 years by Mr. Huffman over in Overland Park off Shawnee Mission Parkway. This would be an overflow site for repairs. He is the contract purchaser, so he doesn't own this property yet, but would, assuming things go well tonight, would like to purchase it. There'd be primarily dent and detail work with minor paint repairs that would be done, kind of retouching that would be done at this facility. Estimate about 10 to 15 vehicles a week. This would not be a retail location, so customers would not show up. You or I would not drive our car here. This is an overflow facility where the cars would be moved from the other facility in Overland Park to have work done here and brought back to the other facility to deliver to the customers. All vehicles would be brought inside at night. This would not have cars or any vehicles other than about 2 to 3, maybe 4 employees' cars in the parking lot at any time, and those would be parked right up against the north side of the building where they would enter. There'd be no storage of materials whatsoever, 0, none on the site. Use does conform with the master plan. In terms of the application, as Mr. Richardson said, this is a request both for a rezoning and a special use permit. The Planning Commission did recommend this application by a vote of 6-2. And our only discussion here tonight for you, fortunately, is just to talk very briefly about 2 stipulations that were passed along with the Planning Commission recommendation. Before I go to that, kind of giving the big picture, you probably had a chance to look at the record of the Planning Commission. We spent more time on some of this, but I think this is even relevant to the 2 stipulations. And the big picture is this. This is one of the nicest buildings in this, even though it's been vacant for 10 years. It's one of the nicer buildings in the area. It's a good masonry building. There will be improvements made, we can go into that, but detailed by the applicant as part of this proposal to the site and the building. Like I said, it's been vacant for 10 years. The proposed use would be extremely low traffic, given that it's not a retail building. It's just something that employees will bring cars over during the week as an overflow. It'd be a very light commercial use with all work done inside the building. There's no neighborhood opposition. We had a neighborhood meeting, sent out all the notices. No neighbors showed up at the Planning Commission. We've talked to each neighbor individually. The owner has, and there's no neighborhood opposition to this. The building has been repeatedly vandalized, as happens when buildings are vacant for a long time. It will obviously deteriorate over time without a use, but the good news is we have a great long-time business owner that wants to make this a secondary home. So with that big picture, we focus now just on the 2 stipulations we wish to bring before you for consideration. In your packet, stipulation number 7. we'd ask that you would omit that or delete that from an approval tonight. That specific stipulation said variance for parking and landscaping is required. First, dealing with the landscaping aspect of that, that's actually, and staff will corroborate that was actually a typo. During the Planning Commission meeting, that it was brought up by staff that is not something that requires a BZA hearing, a variance, if you will. So I'm just on the record reporting that should not be there. The second piece of it was parking. And after the Planning Commission hearing, as we sat down with staff and showed the size of the parking lot and worked through the details, there was an agreement, by the way, and we are patching the parking lot where necessary. And then up in the, I'll put the cursor up on the screen, this is the only part of the site that will be used to access the building. There's the garage right there that you go in. Here's how you enter the building on foot. The couple parking stalls will be here. All the ceiling and the striping will be here. So in terms of the parking, it meets code because there's more than enough parking for anybody to use this building however they'd want, although, again, like I said, we don't need it. So as staff also will corroborate, there's not a BZA variance that's necessary for parking for this project. So quickly in and out on stipulation 1, again, for those reasons, we'd ask that you omit that from hopefully an approval tonight. Lastly is stipulation 11. We also would ask that this be omitted and not part of tonight's hopefully approval. The stipulation itself says to close Matney access to the parking lot. Matney is that kind of a drive down here to the south that runs here. And as you can see where the cursor is from here to here, that's an opening to the parking lot, which is larger. That, you know, when we do new developments nowadays, we don't have an access point that is that wide. So Public Works, specifically staff, had asked, would you go ahead and just close that up? And what we would say is, I especially as a professional in this industry, again, if we're doing something new, we definitely don't build access points to parking lots that wide. The reason we don't primarily is for when there's volume going in and out, that there can be conflicts. It doesn't constrain the traffic appropriately. I would say here, for the reasons I said before, not being overly repetitive, literally no one will ever use that access point ever. I can't usually say that ever as part of this business. So there really isn't any traffic safety reasons at all. Second of all, you can't, if someone thought that was an aesthetic issue, I personally don't think that's an aesthetic issue, but in case that's in your mind, because of the grade drop as you head south, you can't even perceive that from Gibbs. Also, this is a side street that is, I was going to call it a secondary, but it's some number below that or higher than that, if you will. It's just, as you can see, all it serves is really this home care facility here. It's just not a street that people are even really using. Putting it, we measured it out, it would be about 100 foot of trying to do hardscape work, and it just, frankly, to close that up is just not a good use of resources, weighed against really no public good, right, that would come out of it. So someday, when this is a 2-year special use application, special use petition, SUP application, if these folks came back or someone else in 2 years and wanted to do something more intense, I think this should be on, frankly, I think this should be on the table and talked about. Certainly if there's ever redevelopment someday, a rezoning and a redevelopment, we'll handle it. But respectfully would ask, among all the other things they're doing to this site that's been vacant and excited to become a business in this scenario, we would ask that this just not be something that's part of this approval tonight, because we just don't see any public good that comes out of it, but there's certainly expense and effort to do it. So again, we'd ask that you omit stipulation 11. So with that, Mr. Mayor and members of the commission, we would ask for your support and approval tonight of the application as recommended by the Planning Commission, with the only exceptions being omission of stipulations 7 and 11. And we'd be happy to answer any of the questions you might have.
Thank you. I want to open the public hearing. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of change of zone number 3152 and/or special use permit SP-2017-65? If so, please step to the podium at this time. Give us your name and address for the record. Seeing none, is there anyone present in opposition who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will now close the hearing. Would the petitioner like to make any closing comments?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Do any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Markley.
I would move to approve with the removal of stipulation 7, right, variance for parking and landscaping required. Is that the right one? 7 and 11.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
+19139158346
Bynum.
is now exiting.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Townsend.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
And that was motion for change of zone, number 3152. Now I'd entertain a motion for SP-2017-65.
Now, do staff do I need to do anything with stipulations on that one? Is it the same? Okay. Same motion to approve this change of zone. Am I on the right one? With numbers 7 and 11 moved.
We have a motion and a second. Wait, roll call? Okay.
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia. Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Townsend.
Aye.
Alvey.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B2 is special use permit application SP-2018-39, Jason Stuber. This is a renewal for an automotive.
+19139158346 is now joining.
This is a renewal for an automotive dealership at 3017 Merriam Lane. The Planning Commission voted 7-1 to recommend approval for 5 years. Mr. Richardson, opening remarks, please.
Mr. Mayor, this renewal and the following case are both on the consent agenda at Planning Commission. The no vote on the consent agenda didn't relate to these two cases, so they're, by kind of happenstance, ended up on non-consent tonight.
Okay.
But staff is recommended in favor of both of them. They've both complied with their previous stipulations.
Is the petitioner here to make any comments? No? Can we just, got to do public hearing? Yes. So if the applicant would come forward, just say you want this and give us your name and address, say you want it, and we'll move on.
Jason Stuber, Overland Park.
Give your address, please.
13005 King, Overland Park.
Thank you, sir.
I'm here for the renewal of my special use permit.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor? Seeing none. Anyone would like to speak in opposition? Seeing none. Any comments from commissioners? I'd entertain a motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Was there another item? Oh, there we are.
So there's the next renewal. The next is a renewal that's also complied with all their stipulations.
This is a special use permit application SP 2018-43. Noah Wambui with Ideal Auto. Please state your name and address and tell us you want it.
Okay, my name is Noah Wambui, address 11312 Indiana Avenue, Kansas City, Missouri. I'm here for the renewal, and I hope you guys approve it for me.
Thank you, sir. Anyone present like to speak in support? Seeing none. Anyone present like to speak in opposition? Seeing none. Any questions or comments from the commission?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That concludes the planning and zoning portion of tonight's meeting. We'll now move to the regular portion of our agenda. Does any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on the regular consent agenda. If an item is not set aside, all items on the consent agenda will be voted on by one vote.
Move to approve all items on consent.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call McKiernan.
Aye.
McGeeh.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Townsend.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Next, we have a public hearing to consider amendments to the 2017 to 2021 five-year consolidated plan to include neighborhood revitalization strategy area. As stated earlier, a resolution was sent out yesterday for this item. First, we'll hear from staff, and then we'll open it for public comments.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We're asking tonight for a public hearing to amend the 2017 through 2021 five-year consolidated plan to incorporate the Park Drive Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy Area. That Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy Area we call NRSA is a HUD designation. It is not a grant, it is a strategy. It's a comprehensive plan, a place-based initiative unlike CDBG or HOME. It works through intense collaboration in a neighborhood to bring transformation. It is a SOAR initiative. I wanted to bring that up also. It makes the neighborhood attractive for investment, ensures that benefits of economic activity remain for the long term, and it supports the use of our community development corporations and community development financial institutions to bridge gaps between local agencies, the business community, and community groups, and it fosters the growth of resident-based initiatives to identify and address their housing, economic, and human service needs. Last year, we started pursuing a neighborhood revitalization strategy area in January. We met with KU master's students and gave them information about our community with data and asked them to prepare a report on tipping neighborhoods that we could work with. They came back to us and recommended Census Tract 422, and later on you'll see a map that designates the area. After that, we held meetings with the residents and businesses in the area, as well as stakeholders such as LISC, lenders, neighborhood groups, social service agencies, and other willing partners. We held meetings in June, July, and September to discuss these concepts. Oops, go back one. Okay. In September, we put out a draft plan for 30-day required citizen comment period, and then brought it forward to the full commission for adoption in October. That adoption permitted us to submit to HUD for their review. We were hoping that we would get approval right away. We did not receive it until February of this year. So today is taking that approved plan from HUD and putting it into the consolidated plan for the next 5 years to work on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And here is the map of the area. You can see that it's I-70 along approximately 16th Street up to Central Avenue, over to Orville, down, I think, 34th Street, and it includes the city park, animal shelter, and all of those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. This time I'll open the public hearing. When you come to the podium, please state your name and city of residency for the record. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments. Is there anyone who would like to comment on this proposal? Hearing none, no further questions or comments, I'll close the public hearing. Do any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. Under the Standing Committee's agenda, we have the Groundwork USA funding opportunity. This item was presented to the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee last Monday. It was fast-tracked to this meeting with unanimous recommendation for approval. Commissioner Markley, do you have anything to add as chairman?
You'll just note from the agenda that this item requires a letter of interest by April 30th, which is why it was fast-tracked.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the commission?
Move to approve.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. And we have a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. We have two items under the administrator's agenda. The first item is an ordinance for the renewal for the public safety and infrastructure sales tax. I'll turn the meeting over to Administrator Bach.
Thank you, Mayor, Commission. Tonight we have on our agenda is the consideration of the renewal of the dedicated sales tax for the continuance of this tax. If approved by the voters, this would be something that would maintain our current sales tax rate. It does not constitute an increase in our sales tax rate. It dedicates 3/8 of a cent to public safety and neighborhood infrastructure. At this time, we're recommending that this go for the August 7th election, which is the date of our current primary. It would continue this from July 1st, 2020 for a 10-year period. And expenditures are approved, any expenditures we do under the dedicated sales tax are approved annually by the governing body. A little bit of history on the sales tax. It was initially approved in April of 2010 with 70% of voter approval. It is a city tax, which means it is only collected within the city of Kansas City, Kansas. It had a 10-year original term, which expires in June of 2020. And the collection started on July 1st of 2010. You may think since we're in 2018, we look at this and think, why are we doing this now? But as you know, we are planning our 2019 budget at this time. So if this were to be approved later in the year, that would let us know what we're doing as we move into the 2019 years we plan 2020. We've collected more than $54 million to date. We expect about $80 million to come in from the original 10-year period by 2020. And the funds for this can only be used for public safety and neighborhood infrastructure as specified in the ballot language. All retail sales within Kansas City, Kansas collect the 3/8 cent sales tax. The Village West area receives 12 million visitors per year, and the sales tax is paid by tourists and visitors visiting all of these KCK area. This benefits all our KCK residents by putting more into the sales tax and less burden on property tax. And continuance of the public safety and neighborhood infrastructure dedicated sales tax will keep the sales tax rate unchanged going forward in this 10-year period. This shows you just where we're at from a sales tax perspective. We're at 9.125%. As you can see by this bar chart, the majority of the sales tax that's collected by our city goes to the state of Kansas, 6.5%. There's a penny each for the county and then the city. And then we have the two special taxes, one being for the emergency medical service, our ambulance service, and that's 1/4 cent. And then the public safety and infrastructure tax, which is being considered to be continued, is 3/8 cent. As a comparison to where we are in the rest of the metro, most of the cities on this chart are in Johnson County, but we also looked at cities to the west of us and north up into the Leavenworth area, and also Kansas City, Missouri. One thing I'll note is you see Kansas City, Missouri, their state sales tax is about 2.25 cents less than ours. So even though their overall sales tax is less, they get more as a city than we do. And you can see here we're the red line through the middle, so we're on the lower end at least, or below the midpoint of what area other places are doing in a collection of sales tax. How does this affect the average consumer coming in? So we put a few items up here that people may do. You buy pizza, it's costing you about 6 cents. And you can see the different examples we have. If you go out and buy $100 worth of groceries, that could cost you an additional 38 cents. How we're programming this money into 2018, we have $3.9 million that's directed toward fire operations and $3.9 million toward police. We have $3.3 million that's headed toward neighborhood infrastructure. So it's We're working toward being at even thirds really as we go through this. There's nothing that says that it has to be balanced that way, but this is where we targeted for 2018 and what's in the approved budget this year. When we look back at the survey that was done earlier this year, we asked our residents about where their areas of emphasis were, and they were in line with what this dedicated sales tax does. Streets was number one. And you can see by an overwhelming majority, our citizens said not only is streets a priority, but it's an area where we should spend more money in the future. They also ranked police as another high area, the number 2 priority in our community. When you looked at it and broke it down district by district, it's the same from the same survey. Maintenance of city streets was number 1 across the board in all areas. You'll also notice that police services hit in each of the areas too, or most all the areas as well. Continuing on from a look at the survey, we asked the question if the residents would be interested in us continuing this sales tax going forward. And we had over 76% of our residents supportive of continuing the dedicated sales tax. So what's in neighborhood infrastructure? That includes our streets. It also includes a program that we called CNIP. These are our Commission Neighborhood Improvement Projects, which was very specified projects that went out into specific districts and allowed commissioners to do some nice improvements in those areas. Many of our safe routes to school programs, which means the sidewalks that we're doing up to the schools that we do our local match on, comes from this money. We put money toward community centers, curbs, sidewalks, and parks. This is a smattering to show just where we've done different infrastructure projects through the city over the past 7, 8 years that we've been in this program. We've also purchased 50 police vehicles, 15 different pieces of fire vehicles, various apparatus, 8 police motorcycles, our police vehicle and body cameras. Bottom for the vehicles, we're just now buying that for the body cameras, have come from this funding. And we've put this money in each of these different facilities that you see up here. It's police headquarters and fire headquarters on the side, and then our South Patrol had money from this funding in it as well. Annually, we are paying for 50 different public safety positions out of this fund. Okay, how do we manage this money annually? The UG Commission approves all the appropriations that we look at. The Commission reviews revenues and expenditures on an annual basis. So we go through, as we're doing this year, we prepare the budget, we put it together, we bring it forward to the governing body. We break out where we are from the dedicated sales tax, so you see that. Residents have input on that annual budget. We already had a public hearing for this year to tell us where we ought to be putting priorities. As was the survey and that budget, we hear that about public safety and our infrastructure. And then expenditure information is available on our open data site, so residents can go see, and you can break that back over the years that we've had our dedicated sales tax in place to see where we have spent that money. As I stated at the beginning, this is not a new tax. This retains our current 3/8 cents dedicated sales tax that's in place today. It's paid by millions of annual visitors, and just to stress that point, as I projected that we're looking at $10 million annually now, but we're only looking at about 80 coming in over the 10-year time period. That's because the Village West area came online at the end of 2016. So there's $1.5 million to $2 million that's coming out of that area specifically that goes into this dedicated sales tax fund. So that's adding to it. So that's money that outside visitors that are coming to our community are paying that our residents don't have to pay as much of. It funds the neighborhood infrastructure improvements, including streets, sidewalks, safe routes to schools and parks, and it funds the essential police and fire operations and capital improvements. And this will be for a 10-year continuance period from July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2030. This is the specific ballot language. This is listed in the ordinance that's before you tonight, and that's the ordinance. That ordinance recommends the approval to take that forward to the election commissioner. So the commission action that we're asking tonight is to adopt an ordinance calling for this election and approving the ballot language that I just showed you. We'll file this with the election commissioner before June 1. We need to get it to him by that date, but we'll get it well before then. We'll have an August 7th election. That's the date of the primary is what we're recommending. And upon approval by the residents, then we would bring an item back before the commission so you'd approve the ordinance levying the dedicated sales tax going forward. So as I said, we have information about the sales tax at this website. Residents can go to that to find it. You can also go to our OpenGov site and you'll see a chart that's similar to this. And if you hover over each of those areas, you can see one where it shows where we're spending money in police department, where we're spending money in fire. Also, you can see some of the breakouts down below where I've referenced public neighborhood infrastructure. It shows different money that's in parks, different money that's been in different public works projects and such like that. So our OpenGov site is very transparent about showing our residents where that is. And with that, Mayor, I would recommend approval of this ordinance, but I clearly stand for any questions that you may have of me, or either of my chiefs or public works directors are here as well that could answer questions about where, if there's questions about where maybe funding has been spent with them.
Thank you. Doug? Comments? Commissioner McKiernan?
Thank you. Doug, thank you very much for the presentation. Certainly I am very much in favor of continuing this very beneficial tax. And it's on that continuation point, I just want to say, when you brought up your examples of how much additional we would pay on, and you said $100 worth of groceries, it would be an additional 38 cents. I want to clarify, I'm paying that 38 cents today gladly. It will not be an additional 38 cents over what I am currently paying today. And so that's the point I want to make is this is in place and has been in place for 10 years. It will not represent any additional on any purchases we make, correct?
You are correct.
Okay.
Commissioner, misstatement on my part. It's a continuation of what that is, no additional.
Thank you. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Administrator, for the presentation. I know several times in the last several budget cycles, I've asked how we can go about continuing the pot of money from which the CNIP comes. And so here it is. And Commissioner McKiernan has already made the point that this is a continuation, not an addition to taxes that are already made. This is the money from which commissioners can target projects in their respective districts. In one, it's helped to redo at least 3 parks in our ball fields, new sidewalks in well-established communities, and hope we get the chance to do that additionally in other parts of the district and the city. So if it's in order, move to approve.
Second. One more comment. Commissioner Bynum?
Just a quick comment. I've never gotten to allocate any CNIP money. So I would really like us to be looking at, if this is approved, seeing about a return to a CNIP conversation. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Aye. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 2 is an amendment to the Legends Garage and West Lawn Development Agreement. Mr. Bach?
Thank you, Mayor. I will go ahead and recognize our Director of Economic Development, John Stevens, who's going to present this item this evening. John?
Thank you, Doug. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. John Stevens, Economic Development. The item that I bring before you tonight is to consider a resolution approving the Second Amendment to the Legends Apartment Garage Development Agreement. And I think it's important to highlight why the Second Amendment is important to be brought before you tonight. And what it does is it seeks to add further clarification to several elements of the original development agreement that are crucial to the bond approval documentation. Specifically, it clarifies the provisions that provide for LBE, MBE, and WBE recourse should the developer fail to comply, meet, or exceed the LMW requirements for this project. So just to refresh you in short order, this body previously terminated the 6-cent sales tax and imposed a 1-cent CID sales tax at the Legends Shopping Center. It was designated to fund a new parking garage, common area amenities, and improvements called the West Lawn commonly. The CID will generate a total approximately $26.5 million in proceeds to fund these improvements, and the existing 0.6 cent TDD, Transportation Development District, for previous infrastructure work remains unchanged, and approximately 10 years, 9.5 years remain on that. So this is the CID area that was previously approved. And the project details are to construct approximately 265 plus apartments above a 615 space parking garage. 350 of those spaces will be designated as public parking spaces for the Legends Shopping District. There will be a vehicular bridge connecting it to the existing parking garage. The approximate construction budget is $64.3 million. IRBs will be issued, but the developer will receive no property tax abatements on that. The developer will pay a 10-year pilot, of which I'll highlight the schedule with you. And the project is scheduled to be completed by December 31st of 2020. The CID proceeds will only fund the garage, the land acquisition. There is a portion of land acquisition, sidewalk and landscape elements associated with that. And all of the project is capped at $17.5 million from the CID. So very briefly, there is the West Lawn improvements area. You've already seen, if you've been out to the Legends recently, the video boards, several other improvements, facade improvements, a lot of new retail activity. That's that area that they're targeting, and now that the weather is improving, from the developers' feedback, you'll be seeing a lot more improvements of sidewalks and decorative areas for the public to make this, to continue to enhance this district to make it continue to make it a top flight retail destination, as well as where the additional garage and the apartments above are. This was one of the concept renderings that the developer provided related to the parking garage and the apartment complex. There's another view of showing the scale of the project in relation to the Legends. And then the $9 million CID cap for the $40 million total spend on the Legends outlets. The West Lawn, some of the highlights that the developer wanted staff to highlight was the Saks Fifth Avenue replacing H&M. Under Armour is upsized T-Rex space in Building K is being transformed for multiple new retail tenants, and a 40-foot LED board has been added. Here's some of the renderings of the lawn design. Here is the pilot schedule, and I wanted to just quickly note in there that more than 50% of the pilot revenue will go back to the school districts and the Kansas City, Kansas Community College. So very briefly, since this one of the core elements of the Second Amendment is the LMW requirements, I want to highlight what the original LMW requirements are. That's 18%, 15%, and 7% compliance for both. And the codified penalty for failure to perform is a 1% annual increase in the pilot payments and a reduction of the CID cap by $875,000 for the garage and apartment project. And the West Lawn project failure penalty would be a reduction of that CID proceeds cap by $450,000. So in conclusion, and to highlight, some of the elements that I wanted to highlight with you tonight are a cap on the parking improvements costs, that should the developer cost for the garage exceed the $14.273 million, the developer must provide proof and loans of private financing if they go beyond that cost, because that is the CID assigned cost of that public improvement. The garage currently requires 350 spaces minimum to be public, so we have added in the Second Amendment that until such time as the apartments are built and occupied, that all of the parking spaces constructed, so all anticipated of 615, will remain open to the public for the Legends use until such time as the apartments need those for their residents. And then finally, we added more definition to the penalty requirements and the withholding requirements to ensure that the money that I highlighted here for the penalties are available should the developer fail to meet this. I must note that this developer has never failed to meet their LMW requirements in this project, but we wanted to make sure that this was held and that that was reflected when we come before you again for the bond issuance. That's it. So this evening, we're asking for adoption of the resolution approving the Second Amendment. And then I just wanted to note that the future commission action that will be before you at a future date will be the bond issuance approval. And with that, thank you very much, and I will take any questions if necessary.
Any comments or questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. Just one, Mr. Stevens. When is the evaluation of whether or not the WBE, et cetera, targets have been met?
Excellent question. That is, the developer will submit signed construction documents stating and stipulating that they will meet those at different phases. However, that is one of the keys of the Second Amendment, is we will not pay out the CID proceeds, the $875,000 and the $450,000, until such time as they have certified that they have met that. So if they've met it at a portion through met or exceeded it at a portion through the construction, or generally it would be at the conclusion of the garage construction or conclusion of the west lawn construction, we would then certify that they have met or exceeded those requirements, and then that final CID proceeds payment would be issued to them. That is one of the key stipulations. The first amendment of the development agreement did not stipulate the exact process of would those funds be remaining or available should there need to be, should we need to withhold those for penalty. So this Second Amendment ensures that those funds would be available if it were necessary to have a penalty imposed.
So the determination that was made at the very end of the project conclusion, or is there any?
It can occur near the end or towards the end, but traditionally it occurs at the end. Once all the contractors and subs and everyone have submitted, they submit their certifications, and we make sure that it's been met.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve as submitted.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Markley. Aye. Walters. Aye. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Aye. Townsend.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes the portion of our regular meeting. I adjourn us in that capacity. I'll call us back to order as the Land Bank Board of Trustees.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a roll call in a second. Any comments? Apparently seeing none. Roll call.
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley. Aye. Walters. Aye. Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Aye. Townsend.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting for the evening.
I think we have one more item.
Oh, we have Land Bank updates. Oh. Excuse me. We are adjourned.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. My mistake. Don't listen.